So I'm going to put this link in the chat. And what this is, we have done a portfolio workshop before where we actually went through kind of like why we have online portfolios, like different tools that you can use and stuff like that. And in the previous workshop, we used something called GitPod, which is like an online version of VS Code. Today, we are going to do something a lot simpler. So you can ignore most of the stuff in this guide. This is really here as kind of something to fall back on. So if you have VS Code and Git installed, these are the steps that you'll actually go over in the breakout room today to set up with the project that we're doing. And then you can skip down. We're just going to look at, most of this stuff is about like publishing your website or other things. So there's lots of extra stuff in here that you can go look at later. Today we're just going to focus on like editing and setting up an easy way for you to edit. But if you want to publish your site or you want to refresh on like how to commit and push something, we actually have a section here for like how to commit and push. It should look exactly the same on GitPod here as it does in VS Code for you. If you don't know anything about HTML and CSS, we have a section for that as well, because we won't go over that really today. But this is a good reference on how that works and like what you'll be looking at when you see your HTML file or your CSS file. And you don't have to fully understand this stuff in order to replace things. I'll show you what we're going to do with that. But if you're curious about like how it works or how these things relate to each other, then you can definitely check out this section. And there's lots of links in here too. So if you want to learn more about what elements actually are or the different tags that HTML has, like you can check out all these links in here. So this is just really like a big reference guide. We have some symbol references too, so if you haven't heard of some of these terms that are used, then those are listed in here as well. And then if we jump down to template, this is where we see the template that we'll actually use today, which, fun fact, is the same template we used for our current Girls Who Code website. If you notice, ours is actually just purple and black, but it's got the same layout. So this is the same template. And this tells you a little bit about it, so how many like pictures currently you need in here, stuff like that. And for images, if you want, we have something called Unsplash, which is a really cool place where you can type in and search for anything really, and then these are all free images that you can use. So you can download them and use them for your project, or if you have personal pictures you want to put on your portfolio, you can. You can do some generic like workplace shots that they have kind of like on here. It's totally up to you. So there's a little bit about that here, and we'll look at this a little bit later, but there's some stuff for noting like image sizes and like what the best size will be, that kind of stuff. So we also have, this is the section that we'll pay attention to the most, is comments. So this is what you'll see in the code, is actually comments that say like change me or can change. So change me means that like you definitely need to change that to be related to you, but can change means like you don't have to change it, but it's like a note for how to change that if you're interested in doing it. And then we got a little bit more about like what the README file is. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff, but if you're interested, you can definitely look at it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get set up to where we can just change code inside of the index file in one of the CSS files. And what this will do is this will tell you exactly like what line you can find something in and what to change. So we're going to look at all of this after we get set up. So we're going to use Replit, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. It should be really easy to make an account. It's free. And you should see a page like this once you're on it. Or if you open this tab, you can also see these options. So once everybody is on Replit and you have an account, and you see kind of something similar to this where you have a create REPL button, just give me a thumbs up or a good to go in the chat, something like that. Okay, if you see this screen, there should be a plus button here or this create REPL. I'm just going to click on this one. And then we will select HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then you can name it. I'm just going to name it my portfolio. And hit create. Make sure public is fine. And this will be good for like having your link already live. So if you want to share it or you want to view it in another tab, so you can just leave that and do create. And then it kind of starts us out with this index file, but we're not going to use this. We're actually going to go to this project, and I'm going to paste this link in the chat as well. And so if you go here, you should see this, and this is essentially just all of the files that are in the project. And what we're going to do is go to this code button up here, click on it, and you'll see download zip. So we're going to click download zip, and then just pick where you want to save it. And then once that's downloaded, you can show in folder, right click, and extract, or it might be different on Macs, I'm not sure what your options are, but to unzip the file or the folder. And then, so that should be an unzipped folder now. And what we're going to do is go back to Replit. Not sure if I'm saying that right, by the way. That's how I say it. There's people who say it differently, so it could be repl.it or Replit. If we go to this little 3 circles up the top, there's an upload folder. So we're going to click on that. And then we'll select the folder that we just downloaded and hit enter. It's going to say upload 68 files. I know that sounds like a lot. That's just a lot of things that get created. You don't have to worry about it. Just hit upload. And then that might take a second. So once this is there, you should see however it was named when you saved it. Mine was my portfolio master because I think it came from the master branch. If we go back and look at GitHub, yeah. So this is the master branch, so that's why it says master. If you open this, you can see these are all the project files. So what we need to do now is we need to drag them out. Unfortunately, there's not like a quick way to select these. So we're just going to grab each of these one by one and pull till you see it highlight the entire column. And when you let go, that's putting it at that base of your project. So it might take a second to show up, but we're going to do that for all of these files that are inside of here. There's something to note when you drag out the index.html file. It's going to ask you if you want to overwrite just because it gave you a basic index.html, and you can hit replace and just keep dragging out all of these. And once this is empty, we can close this, hit the 3 dots, and just delete that folder. And so all of our project stuff is now out here. And we can hit run, and we actually see the preview now over here. And if you want to see it in full view, you can hit this little thing in the top right to pop it out into a full view over here. And this is actually a link that you can share with other people. So it's already technically hosting your website for you if you want to share that. I'm on Replit right now, but those of you that are in VS Code, it should be the exact same thing. Where in VS Code you can see your files and you can open up and see there's 2 files that we'll be working with specifically today, and it's this index.html, and then the other one is in this assets folder, so assets, CSS, and then it's this template mo style CSS. And so if you can see inside of each of these, that's where you'll find the little emojis to help them stand out, their comments about what you can do with those. So if we go back to this portfolio guide, there's a list of all the changes you can do. So this section will have the changes that you can make in the index file, and this section is the CSS file. We don't go too far into the CSS file because it gets a little bit more complicated. But the main things that you can change is like the background color, the side panel color. So we'll go through an example of doing that real quick. If we go back in here, VS Code should be the same way. If you hover over a color, you can actually use this color picker to change the color. So we can pick a color and like make it darker, lighter. So I'm just going to change it to blue real quick. And then if I run this again, we can actually see that this changed over here. And for those of you in Replit, if you want to view this in a bigger tab, go over here, click this. It'll pop out and show you in a full tab. And those of you in VS Code, there's a couple different ways that you can view it live. The easiest is going to be if you go to your folder structure, wherever you saved your project, and double click the index.html file. It should open in your browser. And so you should see a preview of that as well. And you just refresh it whenever you make changes, and you should be able to see that the same way. If you have any issues with that though, definitely let us know. And so if you'll see, then we have the other things that you can choose colors, depending on like if you want to change your background and you want to change the font. But those are just more if you want to go more in depth. The main thing that you'll want to focus on is the index HTML file. And this is because this is where you're going to change all the information. So HTML is like the structure of our page and like the text that we see. And then CSS is going to be the styling. So you want to first like focus on changing the text and stuff. So changing this to maybe your name, your current job position, a little bit about you. And you can explore this to like get a feel for how this works. This is essentially a template of one long page so that we don't get too complicated with multiple HTML pages right now. You can just click and it goes down to different sections. And then you can see that like you can have tags for your pictures. These could be pictures of projects, whatever you want to add here. And then a contact me section, you can link to social media. So if we look at this portfolio guide, I'm going to go to this index HTML. And now we can actually see this is going to tell us what line does what. So if this says line 9, whatever you're going to replace is going to be in brackets like this. So you'll leave those quotation marks, you'll just replace whatever's in brackets and the brackets themselves. So you don't leave those brackets in there. So if we are going to, that should have a closing thing. If we're going to change an image and we have an image name that we want to replace it with, we're going to put all of our images in this image folder. So we would just replace like what the image name is. So any of these that you see, like, so you put your name in here, you put a description of the purpose of the website, you'll just replace that. So this will actually tell you like where everything is and what they're doing. And then there's some side notes about stuff that you could put on here, or notes about like, just because you do want an online portfolio, maybe you don't want to put your full name because it might, you know, that is public. There's different notes about that kind of stuff in here. And if you want to change your social media links, we can do that as well. There's this really cool thing where you can actually just say like Facebook, GitHub, Instagram, and it'll already have the logos for that. You just change the word. So just lots of stuff like that in here. You can pick what you want to start with, what you want to do, and you should be able to see your changes reflected. So it just goes line by line and tells you like how to change each of those sections. What I'm going to start with first is talking about the images, because sizing of images can be one of the trickiest things. So if we go to image sizes, we can see we've already inspected to see what size the image is for most of the stuff that you see on that template, and it's 570 by 394. And so we want our images to be that same height and width so that when we look at sections like this, we don't have to worry about like image sizing being off or our images being warped or something like that. So the easiest way that we can do this is by going to Canva is free, and I'll put the link in the chat as well. And we can actually do a custom size, and you can enter that in here, and then any image that you want to resize you can upload to Canva with the steps that are in here, and you can stretch it out, you could fill in the background, whatever you want to make it fit that sizing, and then you can download that image to use for your website. And so if you're using Replit, you can actually upload files here, and just make sure that whatever image files you upload, put in this images folder, so that all of the paths to get to your image will be the same. You won't have to change the code for that. You'll just change the image name. So right now these are the images that are in here, and as you go through and change things, you can delete those if you want. For VS Code, wherever your project is stored, just drag your images into the image folder for that one. And make sure that you're saving your changes, because if you need a refresher of committing and pushing, that's also in here up top. Let me see, commit and push, yeah. So any changes that you make, any files that you add, stuff like that, just go ahead and make a comment about it when you go to commit, like added a profile picture or whatever, and make sure you push it up to GitHub so you're saving your project. But Replit is just dragging it in there. Everything is stored on here for you. If you are interested in connecting Replit to GitHub later, or you want to eventually set up your GitHub and VS Code, I'll be here a little bit longer today too. So if you want to hang back and set that up, but just edit on here for now, that's okay as well. But yeah, that is pretty much the setup. And then you can just choose what you want to start on. So you can see the different comments here and just go, let me go back down to index. So you could go ahead and change your name, and this will tell you like where it appears and stuff like that. So pick what you want to work on, and I will keep sharing my screen so that I'll test some of these out as well for you guys to see. But feel free to go ahead and get started doing whichever one you want to start with. If you don't want to deal with pictures today, because that can be a little bit more of a process, you can go ahead and start just changing all the text that you see in here. Yeah, and that's one thing you can always, like, the cool thing about templates is like you can change this stuff, but you could also remove a section if you're like, this doesn't apply to me, or add a section, or something that I can show you guys too is that's really cool. So Bootstrap is like code that's already made for you. So like if I click on some kind of component that I want, whether that's like a button group or like a carousel of images or something, I can scroll down and see, okay, this is just slide by slide, this has little arrows, and they have all the code that you need for that. So you literally can copy this, paste it in wherever you want it to appear on your page, and then you just include, let's see, under getting started, there's this link that you include at the top of your index.html, and that just basically connects it to all of their CSS. So you don't have to do any of that. Then you just get to pick like what pictures you put in that carousel. So there's lots of like fun ways to do this, where you can keep adding different sections of different kinds of items, like drop down lists, like whatever you want to do, and you don't have to code it from scratch. So I'm gonna put this in the chat as well. This is a great resource. Yeah, that's one thing, like I think for the Girls Who Code website, I did change the CSS part for how big that profile picture could be, because it was like warping our logo. But I don't recommend like going in and changing the sizing of images in general, like through the CSS, just because it could mess with the responsiveness of like how they have everything laid out. So like how this goes from like a mobile view to smoothly like transitioning to a browser. That can get like really messy when you start like messing with the sizes. So like I know how hard that can be. And that's why if you just pick the size that they already have set for their stuff, then your images will go in there nicely and like everything works, and we don't have to like resize a bunch of stuff inside of the CSS itself. But I did put in the, in the guide, there is a part if you want to, let me see. Oh, here we go. Lost my menu. If we go to CSS, smaller. Oh, maybe it was in images. Resize. Yes, resizing the template. So this was the example of like with the profile image. If you do have a set like width and height that you really want to use, then you can change the code, and it tells you like where the profile image code is. And just for reference, if you guys haven't been on our site, it even says my portfolio because this was a forked project from that. We haven't changed the domain yet. But yeah, this is exactly the same template. You can see that this looks a little bit wider, so it fit our logo more. But this is all the same stuff that you guys are using today. And the only thing that was added, I think, was like a couple extra sections. So in changing like, you know, this is events and partners and stuff like that. So this is just a good example of how you can really personalize a site. And you don't have to build it yourself. This took me a couple days to do because it was just a matter of changing images to fit the size and like putting the text in here. So it's definitely doable to make this like however personal you want. So that's pretty fun.